when we use fear to get people to do something, there are usually adverse side effects. People make fear-based decisions without all of the knowledge. It doesn't end up being great in the long run. And what I'm seeing now from a lot of people is they're just freaked out about seed oils. Welcome to Build Beyond, a podcast designed to challenge and guide you on your health journey so that you can meet your full potential. Hey, welcome back to the Build Beyond podcast. This episode, I want to talk briefly about seed oils. I'm going to consider this a part one. I am like a lot of people, I'm very confused on seed oils, and this is something that I've been researching, I guess, unofficially for about a year now. I've got a folder full of papers that I've been going through. I've talked to various people. I get different opinions on it. I've brought it up a couple times on different podcast episodes. I've had, at least with Denise Levenger, the registered dietitian that I've had on before. And, she's not the type of person who's freaked out by seed oils. I do want to get someone on the podcast who's very anti-seed oil. I think that would be an interesting conversation. Right now, I want to be as neutral as possible, and I don't want to tie my opinion to any political ideology and I don't want to have any skin in the game. I really want to just base my opinion solely on what I've read and what I've experienced and what I honestly believe to be true based on the evidence, not based on my feelings. And so what I'm going to do right now in this brief part one, I'm going to give you my current thoughts on seed oils. And then I'm not going to really back this up with research. Although if you're curious about what I've been reading and you reach out to me, I will send you whatever you want. But I think it will be more important. I think it's more important just to get to my opinion out there and then say these things out loud and then bring other people into this conversation. Initially, I want to start with, why does this even matter to me as a chiropractor? Why am I even talking about seed oils? I don't have a really strong background, education in nutrition, although it is part of our curriculum. And so what qualifies me to talk about it? Well, mostly I'm talking about it because people talk to me about it. For those of you who don't know me or don't know how I practice, as a chiropractor, I don't adjust every patient. And most of my patients, I never adjust them. A lot of them, I'll never do soft tissue on them. I operate at this point in my practice predominantly in the rehab space and with lifestyle changes and modifications. So it's about teaching people what they can do for themselves to really get them back to either sport or activities of daily living, or really beyond activities of daily living. Because when we say ADLs, we're really talking about the basic stuff. Going to work, going to the store, and that's all really important. But a lot of people who come see me and want to work with me, they have other goals. They want to go run 5Ks or 10Ks. They want to go on trips. They want to get back to sports. They want to be active with their grandkids. They want to be better at CrossFit. And all of that takes so much more than just lying down on a table and having someone rub you down or pop your joints. So that's why I practice the way I do. And my patients ask questions. And a lot of the questions that my patients ask are about nutrition. And for the patients who do not ask questions about nutrition, I am always subtly trying to weave that into the conversation. Because most of my people, when we're doing rehab, we're exercising. Rehab is just a fancy way of saying strength and conditioning. It's regressed, it's customized to whatever's going on. So we look at what they want to be able to do. All right, and we look at all the physical qualities that they need. And then we look at where they are. And then we bridge that gap. So we'll take the actual activity or the exercise, and if I can, I'm going to modify and customize that down to a level they can do and just start them with that activity. For example, if they want to be able to deadlift, well, I'm going to get them deadlifting as quickly as possible, regardless of pain, because not regardless of pain, but I'm going to be conscious of the pain, but I'm not going to ignore the fact that would, if that's their goal, we need to address that. So if I've got people moving more and exercising more and developing strength and muscular endurance and cardio, they are breaking down muscle tissue that needs to be rebuilt. They are burning calories. They are using their bodies. And those bodies and those tissues need fuel. We know a decent amount about recovery. And most of the things that you get marketed, that are marketed to you for recovery, have little to no evidence. Now, everything is evidence-based per se, or it could be if there's even remotely some anecdotal evidence. But I'm talking about actual outcomes. So people who use this product or go through this protocol, they actually empirically and numerically recover better, and then outperform those who do not use it or who do not follow that path. And there are only, when we look at that with that kind of criteria, there are only a few things that we know actually have that effect, that are actually superior to everything else. And nutrition is one of them. Specifically, if you're going to break down muscle tissue, protein intake. And I'm not going to get into the specifics about, plant protein versus animal protein. Maybe that's another discussion. If you listen to any of my other podcasts, you know that I don't really care. Whatever protein you want to eat. And then we would obviously take into consideration any other health concerns that you have. Because, for example, if you're worried about heart disease, we probably want to look at some plant-based proteins, at least adding more fiber to your diet, which is probably going to add protein. So nutrition is important. Sleep is another one, is huge. And these are kind of the boring things that everyone's like, yeah, I know I should sleep better. I know I should eat better. And it's like, no, you are recovering, especially for my post-surgical patients. And maybe that's another thing that people don't realize, that I do post-surgical rehab. Recently, for whatever reason, I've been attracting a lot of ACL reconstructions. So you tear an ACL, for example, and they go in and they open you up. That's trauma, right? Your body needs to heal where they cut. They're going to stick something, they're going to implant another ACL, however they're going to do it. And your body needs to accept that, and it needs to make new cells. So sleeping and nutrition are going to be huge. So just focus on the pain and put my blinders on, and then we're just focused on the rehab, the exercises. And to not really talk about nutrition with people is doing them a disservice. And we don't have to get super detailed, but we can. And a lot of times when I get super detailed, I do bring in a registered dietitian, especially if there are any complications or any other health issues. But the basics are the basics. So nutrition, like it or not, is a huge part of the way I practice. And it's really, really important for my patients. And my patients have questions. And I've been getting a lot more questions about seed oils and a lot more concerns about seed oils. And so that's why I feel like I don't want to talk about this. It's not really something that interests me, to be quite honest, but I get so many questions, and I think and it's becoming a political issue as well. So I'm starting to see people with certain political ideologies make health decisions based on who they voted for. And it's like, well, it's not really a healthcare provider who's saying that. You got to understand, there are other forces behind, other motivations to make some of these changes or say some of these things. So I want to talk briefly about seed oils because it's a big part of the Maha movement. Now, let's not get political here, but regardless of your politics, I don't care if you're far left or far right. One thing I think we can all agree on is that healthcare in this country needs to be better. The system doesn't work well for everybody. I'm not going to say it's terrible. It's significantly better than a lot of other countries, but also significantly worse in certain ways. I think we can all agree. We might not be able to agree on how it needs to be better, but we can all agree that it's not working as well as it could. It needs to, and I think we can also all agree that the health of Americans could be better, right? And I think we could probably all agree that nutrition is a big part of that. And we're going to differ on what we think should be done, but having access to foods that promote health, it's important. And so hopefully I haven't lost you at this point. We're all on the same page here. So the interesting thing about when you see this change in government and you have Maha come in, they're doing a very good job at pointing out failures of the past. And if we want something to change, we have to be willing to do something different. And for this reason, I am hopeful that on the balance that this movement is going to be positive. They're inevitably going to get things wrong, and my worry is that as we have these growing pains, depending on how long it takes to get the messaging right, there are people who are going to take action on what is being said, and seed oils is one of those topics where I'm not confident that we're being led down the right path. And because the interesting thing is, like, you have to acknowledge, and again, I think whoever is in charge, they have their own biases and they have their own things that they want to see happen. So there's going to be a certain level of BS that we have to just acknowledge exists as Americans, right? And then when someone else takes over, they're going to point out all that BS from the previous administration. But we also have to acknowledge that in its place, they're going to feed us a bunch of their own BS. It's just a different flavor, probably the same level. And I'm wondering at this point where this narrative on seed oils falls. Is this something that they're getting right, or is it just a neutral thing that's distracting us, or is this war, not a war on seed oils, that's harsh. Is this just kind of like anti-seed oil narrative? Is it actually going to produce worse health outcomes? And I don't have the answers to that, but the more and more I read, the more and more discouraged I get that we may be going down the wrong path. And I don't want to take sides on this one yet, because I am fully prepared to change my mind, and that's why I'm really curious to get some people on here on both sides of the spectrum. Maybe not on the same podcast, because I don't know if I wanted to get that inflammatory. But if I can find two people who can be cordial and have a good conversation, I might bring them on together. But let's get back to it. So with seed oils, it seems to me, as I go back through and I look at things and I read things and I watch videos, the anti-seed oil rhetoric seems to have started with an observation that we've all seen. America's getting heavier and less healthy. Okay. Chronic diseases are on the rise. However, people are living longer because of drugs and therapies and different things like that. So that it's not all negative. So we're trending in the wrong direction, and then then you look at the food, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the food environment that may be not great for us. And someone then says, okay, well, what about this seed oil thing? It looks like there are more seed oils in food now than there were in the past. Could this be a big part of the problem? It's a totally reasonable hypothesis. And then if you look at the way seed oils are processed, there are a lot of things taken out of context that look and sound kind of scary. So industrial type chemicals that are used to process and different things like that. And some of these industrial products are known to be related to cancer and different things. So now you're sitting there thinking, wow, oh, geez, cancer's on the rise, or there's a lot of cancer out there, and we're not doing healthy, and we're eating more seed oils. This must be it. And I really think, honestly, that is where it stops. And then people have just been like, yeah, that sounds logical. Let's just run with that. It's a very mechanistic way to look at it, and it's interesting. But then we would have to look at, like, do people, like, are seed oils independent of everything else that's in the food? Are they really the bad thing? So if you look at highly processed foods, and we're talking like chips and fast food and things like that, they tend to be high in seed oils, but they also tend to be A lot of them are high in sugar. A lot of them are high in salt. A lot of them are not very filling, actually, maybe even designed to make you want to binge eat them. They're usually lower in protein, lower in fiber, lower in nutrients. So they're really trending in the wrong direction in almost every category. And they're cheap and they're readily available. They're everywhere, and they can be really addicting for a lot of people, especially people who are more prone to not being able to control their hunger. So if we were hypothetically to take these foods that are trending in the wrong direction in almost every category you can think of, and all we do is we take the seed oils out of the equation. Well, does that, is that the big factor? I kind of don't think so. And the interesting thing is they're not, like Maha, for example, isn't talking necessarily about just removing the seed oils. It's about removing the seed oils and replacing it with something. And they're trying to replace it in many cases with saturated fat, so animal-based fats. Now, the really interesting thing is that when you look at research that compares seed oils and saturated fats from animals, seed oils are healthier for you. They're especially for heart disease, which is fascinating. So, and I'm not an expert on this, and maybe in a later podcast I will actually produce some citations for this. And again, if you're listening to this and I'm really pissing you off right now, just calm down and contact me, and I'll send you what I have, and maybe you can send me what you have, and I'll read what you have, and then maybe if I'm really rubbing you the wrong way, maybe you're the right person to be on my next part 2 for this. But if you look at, so we've got research, and it seems like there's an ample amount of it that compares saturated fat from animals with seed oils, and seed oils actually do better for heart health. And heart disease is a big problem. I think it's a bigger problem now statistically than cancer. So hypothetically, if we don't change all of these other variables in the food and we pull seed oils out and then we put saturated fat from animals in there, based on the research that I've read, we are probably going to increase our heart disease in this country and not actually change anything else, because nothing else changes and the calorie count stays relatively high. The foods are still addictive. So I think, I don't know. I'm not pro seed oil, but also let's say you took someone who doesn't eat processed foods and it's all home cooked meals. And, every once in a while they bake a cake with canola oil, or they use canola oil a little bit to fry things up. So they're getting, maybe they're not using olive oil at all, or coconut oil, or whatever the other oil people think is healthy, and they're only using seed oils, but they're using it in such a small quantity. Is that really going to affect them? I mean, in many of these cases, the dose makes the poison. So I kind of think it wouldn't. So it's an interesting thing, because I'm not so sure that this focus on seed oils is what we need to be doing. Now, the interesting thing, if someone's going to cut out seed oils, essentially they're going to cut out ultra processed foods, and they're going to have to replace that with something. Now, if they replace it with whole foods, and like fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, lean meats, things, beans, rice, things like that, they're going to be better. They're going to be healthier. They're probably going to lose weight. But is it the absence of the seed oils itself, or is it the absence of everything else that goes along with the seed oils in those foods? It seems to be that seems to be the case. So you might be sitting there thinking like, okay, well, what does it matter then if people make the change? I agree. If someone comes in and says, hey, I'm freaked out about seed oils, I'm going to change from my standard American diet to eating a whole foods diet, I am not going to give them this lecture. I'm good. Go do it, because you're going to see benefits. I think the problem is that when we use fear to get people to do something, there are usually adverse side effects from that we don't like. And people make fear-based decisions without all of the knowledge, it doesn't end up being great in the long run. And what I'm seeing now from a lot of people is they're just freaked out about seed oils, and they're scared about everything around it, and they're actively avoiding it. But they're not. A lot of people aren't necessarily choosing to go eat whole foods. They're looking at ultra processed foods that say they don't use seed oils. So a lot of people are now like, it's like, oh, I'm still going to eat chips. I'm just going to eat chips that don't have seed oil in it. So I don't know if people don't understand that seed oils might not be like the thing. It's everything that goes along with those foods that tend to be high in seed oils. And they just start replacing ultra processed foods with other ultra processed foods that just don't have seed oils. I don't know that you're going to get the benefit that you want. And I think the ultimate diet, or the ultimate dietary advice, is probably something your grandparents or your great grandparents would have told you, or would have fed you. You eat fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. I'm going to start sounding like with CrossFit, the thing that Greg Glassman came up years ago, and I won't say it right, but it's like, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, lean meat, some starch, things like that, and no sugar, essentially avoiding sugar. And when I say sugar, I'm not talking about fruit. I'm talking about, again, ultra processed foods that are just like high in sugar. And it's not like they're going to kill you, but eating that stuff regularly obviously has an effect on your blood sugar, can have effect on your heart. So it's not a great thing to do. But so that's where I stand on seed oils at this point. I want to remain neutral, and I want to keep my mind open. The more and more I read, the less and less convinced I am convinced that this is a huge problem that we need to focus our efforts on. As if when we remove this seed oil thing, it's going to have some type of magic effect on our health. It seems to be that people need to know that they don't need to be afraid of certain things. And then we need to look at, how do we make access to a lot of these whole foods? How do we make it more affordable? How do we make it easier? How do we break this? Because you got to understand that there's generations of people who have not had great diets, have eaten the standard American diet, and they're raising kids right now that are going to eat that same way. So how do we break that cycle? Is that something that we have to do in schools? Do we have to get like a good home ec program? Do we need to really revamp the way we do nutrition in schools, so that kids grow up eating and learning and enjoying these foods? I don't know. I don't really know the answer to it. It would seem that we're going to need a multimodal approach to this, and it's going to take probably a generation or two. But I have hope for it, because when I was a kid, smoking was still cool. And now if you see someone smoking a cigarette, it's almost taboo at this point. But I remember people being able to smoke in restaurants. It was very common. And I remember it being cool in high school, when I was in high school. So we have, as a society, we have looked at cigarettes and we have said, that's obviously not good for you, and we don't like that. And we've made it a societal thing. The unfortunate thing is that, now we have vaping, and, weed's legal and all this other stuff. So, in the place of cigarettes, some other things have slid in that back door and taken advantage of it. And I feel like this is probably what's happening, or going to happen, in the food environment, as we kind of break things down and expose different things. It leaves an opening for a lot of people and a lot of different companies and different incentive groups to come in and use their own biases and shape the narrative, and kind of start to mislead us. So I'm hopeful about Maha. I'm hoping that on the balance, they get things right. I'm glad that we can openly talk about and want to change things. And I'm glad, at least, regardless of your political affiliation, who you voted for, that we can all agree on some things, that things need to change. But we'll see. So that's my thought. Those are my thoughts on seed oils at this point, based on everything I've read. And if you're a patient of mine and you have questions, please ask. you're not a patient of mine, you can reach out, contact me. I'll give you, like I said, I'll give you all the information that I have. If anyone's listening to this and you want to be on this podcast and you think you have something important to say about seed oils, pro or con or neutral, reach out to me. Let me know. Maybe let's talk. Maybe you are a good future guest on this topic. Or if you know someone, recommend them and I'll reach out to them and get them on. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later.